welcome to another episode in our influencer series, In Conversation With. And today we're speaking with Craig Summers, the UK Managing Director of Manhattan Associates. Hello, Craig.
Good morning, good morning. Nice to meet you both.
Good to see you.
Well, today we're going to talk about retail in a post-coronavirus landscape.
Yeah, really interesting, deep stuff.
Shall we start?
We'll make a start. Let's dive in. In terms of key learnings from the lockdown, I mean, it really has become a new world of retail now. What do you think those are, those key learnings?
I think I think the first thing I would say is it's amazing how capable we are as human beings to adapt really quickly to unprecedented change. And that really goes into the lovely thing about retail is we're all consumers as well. So we see it from both points of view, don't we? And I think our colleagues in retail have done a quite amazing job really of having to cope with something that nobody was ever really expecting. Pandemics were talked about, but I'm not sure about you. I never really absorbed the fact there may be one in my lifetime.
No.
It was more the thing of films rather than reality.
Yeah, absolutely, science fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. But if I then look, people have talked about being agile and being ready for disruption as a business kind of problem to be ready for, but I'm not really sure. And I think one of the learnings is this can now be a reality. I think if you're thinking about business continuity planning for the future, thinking about what your business is going to look like for the future, then actually that's something that has to come to the heart of it. And on top of that, and I think in retail, it's very quickly become accepted that we as consumers act differently because retailers have to act differently. So from a e-com side, then the expectation of possibly next day, if not same day, had to be reset a little because demand went up. And I think generally that was accepted. And from physical stores, those were allowed to open, have had to realize they have to open in a way that might not have been expected. And I think that has become an absolute big learning that you now have to do something differently to protect your colleagues and your customers. And that's actually at store and at warehouse level and at distribution. The whole of the supply chain is affected. Yeah. On top of that, I think there's such a big thing in understanding what inventory you have. So if you're under pressure for demand, you want to have real confidence in understanding what you have and where and what you can sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's also been a societal shift, wouldn't you say? You know, during the lockdown, people's thoughts regarding online shopping and the tendencies to sort of think, actually, I can leap online and get my groceries if I need them.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a lovely example where I live on the south coast, where I live in a sort of a town where there are some independent retailers, butchers, grocers, deli, that type of thing. And they formed an alliance and a little website, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it isn't something that a big box supermarket would have, but enough that you can order online and get deliveries. And they were doing emergency deliveries for kind of more vulnerable initially, and now they've created something they want to keep going forward. So it's a really nice example of a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the Fresh Produce Consortium who launched On Your Doorstep?
Yeah, I actually worked with the Fresh Produce Consortium to launch On Your Doorstep, which is a really similar thing, just bringing in small traders and finding a way, a little portal for them to actually reach customers in their area. It was free of charge and it gave them such a helping hand. So, you know, it was a time, I think, when everything was shifting, you know, society, everything, and it was finding ways to get those groceries and those goods to the people that needed them most.
Well, we do a lot with the co-op, and that's sort of public domain, and we had some conversations through it, and they were doing the sort of volumes that they might have expected once a year, but because co-op is so prevalent through the country, I think they say they have a co-op in every postcode. They really became, particularly at the beginning, I would say, a really essential service.
Yeah, absolutely. I
mean, what changes do you think are necessary for retailers to undertake following the pandemic?
Well, so I kind of, in the short term, I guess the whole thing really has been around people, i.e. protecting colleagues and ensuring customers are protected. So I think even I went, funny enough, on Saturday, it was the first time I realized I went properly out shopping. So I'd been kind of grocery shopping, but there were some other things I wanted. And going into a clothing store and, you know, queuing beforehand and then sanitizing going in. We're a bit more accustomed to masks. We're accustomed to doing that, but I hadn't quite done it in that environment, only really, I guess, in grocery and supermarket. And I think that whole piece is something that's very much going to stay until we have a vaccine or a cure. I think that's going to be a way that our retail colleagues have to be, and we are. But I think also we've been using, particularly in the UK, we were early adopters of e-com pretty much. We were pretty much ahead of Europe, but I think that's grown significantly. So that's great if you're a pure play, but if you're a high street presence where perhaps 20 to 30% of your business was set up for e-com, I think actually the need to bolster that going forward is going to be absolutely critical. And things like click and collect, which I'm personally quite a fan of, I quite like it. I think when people talk about omnichannel or multi-channel, that to me is that's what we use as an industry, as consumers. We start most journeys perhaps on our phone and then we bounce around, don't we? We don't think we're having a multi-channel experience, we just bounce. But where it ends might still be picking something up in a store. But for instance, in the US, we had a customer that wanted to be able to do curbside pickup. So the same concept as click and collect, but people didn't want to get out the car.
Yeah.
But so we were able to do that really quickly for them. But I think that's a kind of a way of working that might not have been thought of before that makes sense. I know some supermarkets now have a form of that, and I think that will grow. And I think as I look to the longer term, in terms of new ways of working, then if you're a more traditional retailer and you haven't been investing in your technology at the rate of your online competition, then the risk is you're going to get left behind more quickly than you were getting left behind if high street style of shopping starts going down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also talk, Craig, about the unsung heroes of the supply chain. I love that during the lockdown. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, yes, and I think absolutely rightly we recognise those that we see in front of us, don't we? So of course, absolutely the health service, and I still think we're the luckiest country in the world with our health service. And actually, and then we start being aware of those still having to go to work in stores and having to go to work as delivery drivers. But behind those, there is a massive amount of people trying to work out and cope with working in warehouses and DCs and other back office operations to keep that supply chain running. And it was interesting, from a big part of our business is around warehouse management systems.
Yes.
And we're suddenly realizing, and we're working with our customers to ensure that a picker could be distanced from another. So the picking path that they take has to be subtly different to one if you're trying to keep 2 meters apart.
Yes.
And that's really important on the efficiency of how that warehouse works. So to me, the unsung heroes were there was just so many people we were aware of that were behind the scenes really working to keep us. Yeah. And it was amazing that we were still able to get a loaf of bread. Okay, there was a feeling of a bit of rationing in the beginning because there was panics on odd things like loo rolls and the like, but yeah. But actually, it was amazing what was achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely agree with you. I mean, we really, as a nation, experienced an unprecedented level of fear in terms of the food supply. We talked about stockpiling, and the hashtag Feed the Nation. I mean, I saw it tweeted out constantly, almost became a new mantra for, societal challenges. So we've really discussed this, but again, the way that the grocery supply chain managed during the lockdown, do you think now processes have changed for the future in terms, as a result of social distancing, potentially for the better?
Yes, well, I think if I sort of take a step back at the beginning, I think there was a realization that one of the things that we've had the luxury of in recent years is an incredible selection. One of the things that the big box supermarkets have brought is choice and selections beyond our kind of wildest dreams, really. And at the beginning, I think there was a realization, actually, you've got to just focus on the basics. So you've got to get stuff that bread, milk, eggs, loo rolls, the core things that people really need to carry on. And I think there was this realization that you now write down on those and then start, and it feels like selection and choice is back. I do think in a broader way, there is a realization that we're only one tweet away from the next panic. It could quickly be created. How that's dealt with, because you can't, it's very difficult. We don't as a country want to overly stockpile, and that wouldn't be a good thing. I think there's a realization that from a grocer's point of view, having a really efficient supply chain becomes all the more important. So knowing you can cope with the volumes, knowing you can in your distribution centres potentially have less people or people spaced out in a different way, but still be efficient, still get the throughput. I think there's a realization that the delivery network under the pandemic benefited from less people on the roads. I think as the roads are getting busier again, that dynamic changes. But I think if we go into a lockdown again, then that will come back. But it's kind of an interesting time, right? I think there's a lot of kind of unknowns going forward because we don't know how long we're going to be living with this. So my assumption is we're more of the same for a long time.
I mean, are we still going to have operational agility? I suppose it's going to continue to evolve in the post-coronavirus world.
Well, it becomes more important, doesn't it, Dean? I think it's that kind of essential. If as expected, and I'm not an economist, right? But if the economy does come under some pressure over the coming years, we've got to pay for everything that the government has done somehow. If that's under pressure, then focus really will be on operational efficiency and agility to adapt to whatever comes next. And actually adapting what it feels like is going to happen is regional lockdowns. So how do you as a retailer suddenly react when you have to close your stores or change the way your stores operate in a geographical area?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's happening now, isn't it? It's happening, on and off in different areas. It's, switching it on, switching it off. And yes, how do retailers cope with that? I mean, with that in mind, can a socially distanced high street work in the future, do you think?
My inclination is to say yes, and actually I've always been of a view that people quite enjoy shopping, and online shopping is one dimension. Going out and having the shopping experience is still something that a lot of people actually get pleasure from, and it's no coincidence that a lot of food chains popped up on the high street as well, because that enhances that going out and shopping experience. One thing with the high street, I would say though, for a long time, a lot of retailers were almost putting less floor space to selling that they'd traditionally done, and more floor space to a more experiential kind of approach to retailing, to try and encourage us to be engaged with them. I think that's going to be really difficult to execute on. In terms of the high street and my experience from Saturday when I did go out, it was quite odd watching other people. It was a great people watching exercise that arrows seemed to be optional.
Yeah.
But also I don't think that was intentional. I think that was forgotten about. Yeah. Face masks are fascinating. Some people wear them with their nose out. There's an etiquette that I think will sort of come down.
Etiquette now, absolutely. Yeah.
But I don't think that's your room.
I have to say, I have to have my nose out because I don't like my face fully covered. I don't know what it is, but I just have to have my nose out.
Yeah, I'm kind of up to sort of
you go full on.
I'm mid-bridge, I am. You're below. Yeah, there is an etiquette now. You're so right. Yeah. There's definitely an article in this. Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning. It's been fascinating. And you've been so insightful. Thank you.
No, great discussion. Really nice to talk. Thank you.
Wonderful.
You have a great day.
Thank you.
And you. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.